I came home just after 3 in the afternoon. The meeting downtown had gone better than expected. Not perfect, but solid. The suppliers were flexible. We negotiated numbers that made the project stronger, not weaker. As I parked the car, I remember thinking that the hardest part of the week was finally behind me. I unlocked the door. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Noah's shoes were by the door. Marcus's laptop bag was on the chair. Everything looked normal. That was the problem. When something is wrong, it rarely announces itself. It waits for you to notice. I walked straight to my home office. I didn't even sit down. I pressed the power button on my desktop and waited for the screen to wake up. The folder was gone. I stared at the screen. Not reacting at first. No rush of panic. No racing thoughts. Just a slow, deliberate refresh. Once, twice. I opened the recycle bin. Empty. I checked the backup folder. Empty. I opened the drawer where I kept my external hard drive. The drawer was empty too. That was the moment my hands started to shake, not violently. Not dramatically. Just enough to tell me my body understood something, my mind was still organizing. A year of work. Gone. Not misplaced. Not corrupted. Deleted. This wasn't a hobby project. This was Whispering Pines. A $2.5 million landscape architecture contract tied to a gated development on the north side. The kind of project that doesn't come twice in a career like mine. The kind that changes how people say your name in a room. I tried to log into my cloud account. Incorrect password. I typed it again. Slowly. Correctly. Incorrect password. I stood there, listening to the low hum of the computer fan. The room smelled faintly like coffee and printer ink. Everything was exactly where I left it that morning. Except for my work. Elena? Marcus was standing in the doorway. His voice was careful. Controlled. The voice people use when they sense danger but don't know its shape yet. I didn't answer him right away. "Did anyone come in here today?" I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation mattered. "My mom stopped by," he said. "Just for a bit." In quote. I turned around. "You promised me," I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. She said Noah wasn't feeling well. She brought medicine. She didn't touch anything. "It's now doing." I walked past him and called out to my son. "Noah, baby. Come here." "Any Jane." He appeared at the edge of the hallway, holding a cup of water with both hands. He looked nervous. He had learned that look early in life. Kids always do. "Did Grandma sit at my computer today?" I asked. He looked down at the floor. "She said it was a secret," he said quietly. That was enough. I didn't ask more. I didn't press him. I didn't need details yet. The pieces were already aligning on their own. I went back to the office and checked the system logs. File paths accessed. Deletion timestamps. The activity wasn't random. It was deliberate. Sequential. Clean. Permanent deletion. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. I sat down slowly and closed my eyes. 4 hours. That's how long I'd been gone. In 4 hours, someone had erased a year of my life. Marcus was talking behind me. Explaining. Rationalizing. Offering theories that made him more comfortable than the truth. I listened without interrupting. Silence can be a form of power when used correctly. I grew up learning how to observe before reacting. When you don't come from a place of safety, you learn to read rooms the way other people read menus. You notice what doesn't belong. And this didn't belong. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't curiosity. It was intent. I stood up and walked to the window. From the 6th floor, the city looked calm. Traffic moved. People crossed the street. Somewhere nearby, a delivery truck beeped as it reversed. Life was continuing, unaware that something irreversible had just happened in my living room. "Do you understand what this means?" I asked Marcus, still facing the glass. He didn't answer immediately. "This wasn't just files," I continued. "This was contractual work product. Licensed designs. Client-owned materials. If I can't recover this, I'm liable. It is unapologetic. That word landed differently. Liable. I finally turned to look at him. "I could lose the contract," I said. "I could lose my firm. I could be sued." End quote. Ever. End quote. His face changed then. Not anger. Not disbelief. Fear. Fear has a way of clarifying priorities. "I'll talk to her," he said. "She's old. She doesn't understand this stuff." I didn't respond. Because I understood something he didn't. This wasn't about technology. This was about punishment. For 9 years, Ruth had reminded me where I came from. Foster care. No family name. No safety net. She never raised her voice when she did it. She didn't have to. Contempt doesn't need volume. And now, on the one day I needed protection the most, she had walked into my home and reached for the only thing that mattered. My work. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No warning texts. No apologies. Just silence. That silence told me everything. I sat back down at my desk and opened a blank document. Not to design. Not to rebuild. Not yet. I started writing timestamps. Names. Access points. Documentation is where control begins. If you were in my situation, you might think the worst part was the money, or the betrayal, or the fear of losing everything you worked for. It wasn't. The worst part was realizing this wasn't impulsive. It was planned. And that meant whoever did this believed I wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. If you're watching this, please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and comment below what city you're listening from. This story needs to be heard. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when I still believed my life was normal. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was panicking. Panic wastes energy. I stayed awake because my mind was reorganizing itself around a new reality. When something you've built disappears, you don't mourn it first. You inventory the damage. I sat at the kitchen table while the apartment settled into its nighttime sounds. The refrigerator clicked on and off. A car alarm went off 2 blocks away and then stopped. Marcus went to bed without saying much. That, too, was information. I opened my laptop and pulled up the earliest drafts of Whispering Pines that I had emailed to myself months ago. Low-resolution previews. Outdated concepts. Not usable, but they reminded me what the project had been before it became valuable. This project wasn't just a contract. It was proof. When people look at my resume now, they see degrees, certifications, awards. What they don't see is the fence. I was 14, standing outside a gated neighborhood not unlike Whispering Pines. Tall iron bars, perfect lawns, houses that looked quiet in a way I didn't understand yet. I stood there too long. A caseworker grabbed my sleeve and pulled me back. "Stop staring," she said. "That life isn't for kids like you." End quote. She wasn't being cruel. She was being efficient. The system doesn't run on hope. It runs on probability. Kids like me don't usually grow up to design spaces for people who never had to wonder where they'd sleep next. We learn survival skills, not long-term planning. We learn how to adapt, not how to own. Whispering Pines was the first time I crossed that invisible line, not as an observer, but as the decision maker. Every pathway, every lighting angle, every frost-resistant tree species had been chosen by me. I wasn't borrowing access. I had earned it. That was what Ruth never forgave. From the first dinner Marcus took me to at her house, I felt it. The pause when I answered questions. The way her smile tightened when I mentioned foster care. As if I'd said something unsanitary. "And who are your people?" she asked that night. "I grew up in the system," I said. "Foster care. It's 5-5. The room went quiet. Not shocked. Evaluating. At our wedding, she leaned toward her friend and said, just loudly enough for me to hear, "Well, what can you do? My son is in love. If you can't's not of that." When Noah was born, she inspected him like a document needing verification. "Let's hope he takes after our side," she said. "At least the nose looks right." End quote. These weren't explosions. They were deposits. Small, consistent investments in a narrative where I was temporary, replaceable, lucky to be included. Whispering Pines threatened that story. The client, Henry Whitmore, wasn't just wealthy. He was precise. He liked documentation. He liked people who showed up prepared. When he chose my firm, he didn't do it because he felt sorry for me. He did it because my proposal was better. That matters to people like Ruth. Respect that isn't granted by bloodline is dangerous. I remembered the nights leading up to the deletion. Me at my desk at 5 a.m. The city still dark. Rotating a 3D model on the screen. Adjusting curb heights. Calculating drainage flow. Testing winter lighting scenarios. Marcus would come up behind me, half asleep. "You're doing too much," he'd say. "You've still got time." "It's a Barrett take of very 5. I always answered the same way. "This is the time." A 2010 He thought I meant deadlines. I meant opportunity. On Sundays, we still went to Ruth's house. I tried to work through dinner excuses. He always pushed back. "She'll call all week if we don't go," he said. "Just an hour. If you notice Netley Dode at her table." The food was heavy and perfect. Roast chicken, candied yams, greens cooked slowly, deliberately. Ruth liked to perform care publicly. It made her private cruelty harder to accuse. "So," she'd say, pouring sweet tea, "when are you going to focus on real work? Taking care of your family?" I never rose to it. Silence denies people the reaction they're fishing for. But inside, I was counting. Every comment, every glance, every moment she watched me work and decided it didn't count. After dinner, she'd take Noah into the back room. Candy wrappers, laughter, doors closing. On the drive home, Marcus would shrug. "She just loves him," he'd say. "Love that comes with conditions isn't love. It's leverage." The week before everything vanished, Ruth started coming by more often. Always with gifts. Always while I was working. Always finding reasons to be near my office door. "You work too much," she told me once, knocking over a cup of coffee and apologizing just a second too late. This is what happens when you choose career over family. It's a dad bod. I cleaned the spill carefully. Not because of the coffee. Because she was watching how fast I reacted. That was the week she learned where I stored my backups. That was the week Lydia started calling Marcus, asking about my schedule, my stress level, my meetings. That was the week Evan came over to fix the Wi-Fi. Ann and I. At the time, it all felt irritating, invasive, not dangerous. That's how most plans succeed. They hide inside normalcy. I closed my laptop and looked around the kitchen. The same table where I'd once filled out scholarship forms. The same space where I'd taught myself to speak carefully, to never sound desperate. This project wasn't supposed to belong to someone like me. That's what they believed. And belief shapes behavior. I stood up and went back into my office. I opened another blank document and began listing every interaction from the past month. Dates. Names. Exact wording. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about record keeping. I wasn't going to argue my worth. I was going to document it. Ruth never raised her voice at me. That was what made her effective. People expect cruelty to announce itself. They look for shouting, slamming doors, public scenes. Ruth preferred control. Control is quieter. It leaves fewer witnesses. For 9 years, she treated me like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. Never directly hostile. Just consistently diminishing. At first, I thought it was adjustment. Different generations. Different values. That's what Marcus told me. That's what I told myself. When you come from foster care, you learn to rationalize discomfort. Stability feels fragile, so you avoid rocking it. But patterns don't lie. Every holiday, she'd seat me next to someone who needed an explanation. "Elena designs gardens," she'd say, smiling thinly. "She likes to draw flowers on a computer. Win 5 hour, not landscape architecture, not urban planning. Flowers." If someone praised my work, she redirected. "Well, Marcus works very hard too," she'd say. "He has a real job." In Mr. Clabbett, when Noah was born, her commentary shifted from me to him. She spoke about genetics the way some people talk about weather casual. Unavoidable. Impersonal. "Children carry traits," she'd say. "You never know what you'll get." Access. I learned to respond with neutral statements. Agreement without concession. Silence without submission. That kind of discipline comes from long practice. 3 years into our marriage, Marcus and I bought our condo. Ruth demanded her name be added to the deed. "Just for security," she said. "Family helps family. It is governed and paid to 6. When I said no, calmly and clearly, her eyes hardened. "You'll regret this," she told me. "Ungrateful little stray." End quote. Marcus pretended not to hear it. Silence can also be cowardice when used incorrectly. After that, the temperature dropped. She began keeping score. Every visit was a ledger of perceived slights. Every boundary I set was treated as proof that I didn't belong. Still, I stayed. I stayed because I believed in slow progress, in earned trust, in the idea that respect could be built through consistency. Whispering Pines changed that equation. The moment the contract was signed, Ruth's behavior shifted from contempt to surveillance. She asked more questions. She listened more carefully. She started showing up unannounced. "You're always hiding in here," she said once. Standing in my office doorway. "What's so secret?" "Client confidentiality," I replied. She smiled, as if I'd told a joke. That smile stayed with me. It's a particular expression people wear when they feel entitled to access they don't have. The Sunday before everything happened, we went to her house again. I tried to decline. Marcus insisted. "She'll take it personally," he said. Ruth was already waiting at the door. Noah's name on her lips before she even greeted us. She hugged him too tightly. She kissed his cheeks too many times. "You're getting so big," she said. "Grandma worries she won't be around forever to see you grow." He was one. Guilt framed as affection is still guilt. At dinner, she brought up children again. More grandchildren. A bigger family. Kids need siblings, she said. They get lonely. APS, please. She looked at me when she said it. Not at Marcus. I nodded and ate my food. No reaction. No debate. After dinner, she took Noah to the back room. I could hear laughter, candy wrappers, the low murmur of adult persuasion. On the drive home, something pressed against my ribs. A feeling I recognized but didn't name out loud yet. She's plotting something, I told Marcus. He sighed. You're reading too much into it. She's lonely. It's not of the Christed in the Devonist. Lonely people don't install leverage. They seek connection. A few days later, Ruth showed up while I was in the bathroom. I heard her voice drifting down the hall. Show Grandma how you turn on Mommy's computer, she said. My body moved before my mind caught up. I stepped into the doorway just as Noah pointed at the keyboard. Mom types in numbers and letters, he said proudly. And what are those numbers? Ruth asked lightly. I stepped forward. Ruth, I said. Please don't touch that. Rate have. 70 full. She froze, hand hovering near the mouse. Oh, she said, wounded. You think I'm going to break it? She pulled her hand back slowly, exaggeratedly, and knocked over my coffee cup in the process. Oh dear, she said. I'm so clumsy. It's The spill crept toward the keyboard. I lunged to grab a towel. When I looked up again, she was scanning the room. Not casually, deliberately. Later that week, Lydia called Marcus. How's Elena doing? She asked. Is she stressed? He answered without thinking. Gave her timelines, meeting dates, travel windows. Information flows downhill when people trust the wrong channels. That night, I watched Noah unwrap a new gaming console Ruth had brought him. Grandma said it's a secret, he said. Secrets between adults and children don't exist for the child's benefit. I told myself not to interfere. I told myself not to escalate. I told myself that suspicion without proof leads nowhere. That was my mistake. Because proof was being created while I was choosing patience. By the time the nanny called to cancel for Friday, citing a family emergency, the stage was set. By the time Marcus promised again not to let Ruth into the apartment, the plan was already in motion. I didn't know that yet. What I knew was that something fundamental had shifted. Not hostility. Certainty. The certainty of someone who believes they are morally justified. People like that don't see what they do as harm. They see it as correction. I went back to my notes that night and added a new heading. Escalation indicators. Relevant everything's to working, under it. I listed dates, phrases, behavioral changes. Because when someone has been quietly resenting you for 9 years, they don't act impulsively. They wait. And when they move decisively. Looking back, the signs weren't subtle. They were simply distributed. No single moment screamed danger. Instead, everything arrived in pieces harmless on their own. Precise when assembled. That's how careful people operate. They don't rush. They layer. Ruth began arriving without notice. Not calling first. Not asking. Just showing up mid-morning with grocery bags and an expression that suggested obligation rather than courtesy. I was in the neighborhood, she'd say. Thought I'd check on my grandson. End quote. She never checked on me. She moved through the apartment with familiarity that wasn't earned. Opening cabinets. Rearranging items. Making mental notes. I kept working. Headphones on. Door half closed. I didn't want confrontation. I wanted distance. Those aren't the same thing. Noah loved her visits. She brought candy. Chips. Cookies I would never buy. She broke rules softly. The way people do when they want children to choose them over structure. Don't tell your mom, she'd say. Smiling. Grandma's house has different rules. End quote. Rules aren't flexible. Authority is. That's what she was teaching him. One afternoon, I heard her voice again near my office. You want that game system, don't you? She asked. I really do, Noah said. Mom says it's too expensive right now. Well, Ruth replied gently. Grandma can help. But it has to stay our little secret. Surprises are more fun that way. It's a not neat one. I paused my work. Secrets like that create loyalty. And loyalty creates access. A few days later, she came by again. I heard her from the bathroom. Show Grandma how Mommy makes her drawings, she said. I want to learn too. It's some ability does not. When I stepped out, she was holding her phone up, pointed at my screen. What are you doing? I asked. Oh, she said, lowering it slightly. Nothing. Just trying to understand this technology stuff. I'm old. R8. She wasn't recording the art. She was recording the process. At the time, I didn't say that out loud. I filed it away. That same week, Evan came over to check the router. Don't turd. Marcus had mentioned the Wi-Fi being slow. Evan worked in IT. It sounded practical. He unplugged things, rebooted systems, asked questions that sounded technical but weren't necessary. Where's the main line? He asked. Is this hardwired or cloud synced? I answered carefully. Vaguely. I noticed a small device on the bookshelf later that evening. A nightlight. Or something pretending to be one. I didn't recognize it. But I didn't remove it either. I didn't know why yet. I only knew it didn't belong. Then Lydia started calling more often. Not me. Marcus. How's Elena holding up? She'd ask. She must be under so much pressure. End quote. He'd tell her. He always did. She has a big supplier meeting Friday, he said once. She'll be gone most of the morning. End quote. Lydia hummed thoughtfully. Information is currency. Some people collect it without spending it immediately. The final rehearsal happened 3 days before the deletion. Ruth arrived unannounced while Noah was home sick and I was working. She walked straight into my office and stared at the screen. Oh my, she said. Is this the famous project? She reached for the mouse. I intercepted her hand instantly. Please don't touch that, I said. These files are critical. I think of her. Her face changed. Not anger. Not embarrassment. Offense. Well, excuse me, she said. Do you think I'm incompetent? I didn't answer. She stepped back, waving her hands theatrically, and knocked my coffee cup over again. Dark liquid spread across the desk, creeping toward the keyboard. Oh, Lord, she said. I'm so clumsy. Dawn won. And divided, I cleaned it quickly, efficiently. While I did, she looked around the room. At the desk. The cables. The drawer beneath. You look tired, she said over her shoulder. Bags under your eyes. This is what happens when women choose careers over family. R.S. She paused. I guess it's hard to understand family values when you weren't raised in one. It's padded in. That sentence wasn't improvised. It was delivered. She left shortly after, moving slower than usual, as if committing the layout to memory. That evening, the nanny called. Her voice was apologetic, shaken. My mom had a mini-stroke, she said. I can't come in Friday. I'm so sorry. Add Friday. The one day I couldn't reschedule. The one day Ruth already knew about. I paced the apartment, calculating alternatives. There weren't many. I'll stay home, Marcus offered. I can work remotely. Noah can watch cartoons. I stopped pacing. Promise me something, I said. Okay. Do not let anyone into this apartment, especially your mother. End quote. He laughed lightly. You're being paranoid. End quote. Promise me. The greatness downing, he hesitated, then nodded. I promise. End quote. I watched his face when he said it. He meant it. That was the problem. He meant it in theory. Friday morning. I checked my presentation one last time. I kissed Noah's forehead. I looked Marcus in the eye. Remember your promise, I said. I remember, he replied. I left the apartment and heard the lock click behind me. As I walked to my car, I felt the weight of everything I'd built pressing against my ribs. Not fear. Responsibility. I didn't know that at that exact moment, Lydia was dialing Marcus's phone. I didn't know Ruth was already outside the building. I didn't know the plan had moved from preparation to execution. What I did know was this: every major loss begins with someone believing they are entitled to decide your limits. And Ruth had decided. The meeting started at 10 sharp. I arrived early, as I always did. I don't rush into rooms where decisions are made. I like to enter already settled. The suppliers from New York were professional, reserved, and attentive. We discussed materials, timelines, adjustments. Nothing felt rushed. Nothing felt wrong. Still, halfway through the presentation, I felt a tightness in my chest I couldn't explain. Intuition doesn't shout. It interrupts. I ignored it and finished strong. While I was answering a question about winter irrigation systems, my phone buzzed silently in my bag. I didn't check it. When you negotiate, divided attention reads as weakness. By the time we wrapped up, nearly 3 hours had passed. We shook hands. Numbers were adjusted. A follow-up email was promised. It wasn't until I reached the elevator that I checked my phone. No missed calls. That should have reassured me. It didn't. At the apartment, Marcus was standing by the window when I walked in. His posture was wrong. Too still. Too alert. Don't get mad, he said immediately. I didn't answer. I set my bag down slowly. Mom came by, he continued. Just for a bit. It's not connotated side. My stomach dropped. But my voice stayed level. You promised me, I said. She was yelling through the intercom. He replied. The neighbors were watching. She said she brought medicine for Noah. What was I supposed to do? That question wasn't rhetorical. He genuinely didn't know. I didn't argue. Arguing wastes time when facts are waiting. Where was she? I asked. The kitchen. With Noah. She sat for a little while and left. I was already walking toward my office. My heels came off halfway down the hall. The screen woke up. The desktop loaded. I opened the project folder. Nothing. I refreshed. Nothing. I checked the recycle bin. Empty. I opened the drawer. The external hard drive was gone. I tried the cloud login. Incorrect password. My hands went cold. Not numb. Cold. This wasn't a glitch. It was clean. Too clean. Marcus, I said. He appeared behind me. What happened? The project is gone, I said. All of it. Down as a vent. He stared at the screen. Maybe a virus. Or a system crash. I have not mass. No. I said. This was done. End quote. By who? He asked. already defensive. I turned to him. Your mother, too. He shook his head immediately. That's impossible. She can barely use her phone. End quote. Get Noah, I said. Noah? His voice cracked slightly. Noah. Now. Enitza, our son, stood in the doorway. Eyes wide. Baby? I said gently. What did Grandma do today while I was gone? He shifted his weight. She said it was a secret. Really did not. I crouched to his level. This isn't about trouble, I said. This is important. End quote. She sat at your computer, he said quietly. For a long time. And she said bad words. And courted. That was all I needed. The next day, I tore the apartment apart. Not emotionally. Methodically. I checked drawers, shelves, power strips, the router. That's when I saw it. A small device on the bookshelf, disguised as a nightlight. I pulled it out and turned it over. A camera. My legs gave out. I sat on the floor and stared at it in my palm. They hadn't just destroyed my work. They'd watched me. Marcus came in behind me. What's that? A spy camera. I said, your brother put it here when he fixed the Wi-Fi. The different next Ivet. He looked at it closely. His face drained of color. This has to be a misunderstanding, he said. A misunderstanding? I repeated. Someone erased a year of my life. Someone stole my backup. Someone planted a camera in our home. Everyone, he didn't respond. The next morning, Marcus came home early from work carrying a stack of printed screenshots. Mom sent these, he said. They were fake messages. Explicit. Carefully staged. A blurred face. A timeline that aligned too neatly with a conference I'd attended months earlier. This is fake, I said calmly. Photoshop. End quote. He looked at the dates again. He wanted to believe them. Belief can be more convenient than truth. I need space, he said. I'm staying at my mom's. I'm Selv. He left. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table. City lights blinking through the window. Noah slept down the hall, unaware that his world had fractured. At 5 a.m, I opened my phone and searched for an old contact. Calvin Reed. We'd studied together years ago. He'd gone into investigations. Digital forensics. I sent one message. I need help. Urgently. End quote. This wasn't the end. It was the point of clarity. The moment I stopped hoping someone else would fix this and decided to do it myself. Calvin replied within 10 minutes. Don't touch anything else, he wrote. I'll be there tomorrow morning. Until then, write everything down. It's climbed opponent. That was good advice. Professionals document first. Emotions come later. I spent the night reconstructing Friday minute by minute. Not imagining. Not speculating. Reconstructing. I wrote down the time I left the apartment. The time the meeting started. The estimated duration. I wrote down Marcus's promise. Word for word. I wrote down Noah's phrasing. Children don't paraphrase unless they're coached. His words mattered. At 7:42 a.m., I left the building. At 7:44 a.m., Lydia called Marcus. At 7:51 a.m., the building intercom logged an entry request. At 7:52 a.m., the front door opened. I didn't know those timestamps yet, but I would. At the time, all I knew was that everything had happened in silence. No broken locks, no raised voices, no witnesses. That's how clean crimes look from the outside. Calvin arrived just after 9 the next morning. He didn't hug me. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He asked where the router was. We started there. He photographed the device on the bookshelf without touching it. Noted the make. The serial number. The power source. Disguised consumer cam. He said, common model. Remote access. Motion triggered. And quote, can you tell who installed it? I asked. He looked at the wiring behind the shelf. Yes, he said. Eventually, it's did action. He connected his laptop to my network and began pulling logs. Someone accessed your system remotely several times over the past 2 weeks, he said. Short sessions. Late morning. Mid-afternoon. End quote. While I was home, I said, yes. He replied. They weren't watching for content. They were watching patterns. End quote. That was worse. Pattern surveillance tells you when to act. Calvin moved to my desktop next. Permanent delete software was used. He said after a few minutes. Not native. External executable. Likely from a flash drive. Clipped. Ruth didn't know how to do that on her own, which meant she hadn't acted alone. Do you know the password was compromised? He asked. I do, I said. Through my son. 18-ogram. He nodded once. No judgment. Just confirmation. Was your backup drive always stored here? He asked. Yes. Within. Then whoever did this knew exactly where to look. Number 5. That answered the question of intent. Calvin left around noon with copies of the logs and images of the device. He promised an update within 48 hours. That afternoon, I began rebuilding the project. Not the files. The structure. I pulled out notebooks. Old sketches. Emails. Measurement notes. Vendor quotes. Anything that existed outside the system. I called 2 friends, Imani and Darius. Both professionals. Both reliable. I didn't explain everything. I told them I had a deadline and needed help. I offered double pay. They said yes. We turned my apartment into a worksite. Imani rebuilt the visual renderings. Darius handled technical specs. I reconstructed the master plan from memory. Memory is more accurate than people think when it's tied to survival. At night, I slept in 2-hour intervals. Not from stress. From focus. On the 4th day, my phone rang. Lydia. I didn't answer. She called again. I answered the 3rd time and pressed record before speaking. Mama's freaking out, she said immediately. She says you restored everything. The client didn't drop you. End quote. I didn't respond. You promised she wouldn't wiggle out of this. Lydia continued. Evan installed the camera. Mama used the flash drive just like he showed her. We did everything. Revelations. Silence works best when people expect reassurance. This is Elena, I said calmly. Please continue. Everyone. The line went dead. I saved the recording in 3 locations. That evening, Calvin called. We traced the camera access, he said. The IP resolves to Evan's workplace. Same subnet. Same credentials. Explain ever. He emailed me the preliminary report. Clean. Clear. Verifiable. The deletion software, he wrote. Matches a tool purchased online 2 months ago. Paid for with a card linked to Ruth's address. In one stand. And the backup drive? I asked. Recovered, he said. Photographed at her house. We had probable cause. I'm scram. I closed my eyes. Not from relief. From confirmation. The next step was Marcus. I asked him to meet me at a diner near his office. Neutral ground. No family territory. He arrived looking older. Tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. I placed the documents between us. camera logs, IP traces, audio transcripts, photos of my hard drive in his mother's house. Your family committed multiple violations. I said. Unauthorized access, data destruction, invasion of privacy. End quote. He stared at the pages. What do you want from me? He asked. I want you to tell the truth. I said. And stand by it. End quote. He stood. I can't, he said quietly. He left the documents behind. That was his choice. The next morning, my attorney filed the civil complaint. Damages, privacy violations, intentional interference with contractual relations. When Ruth was served, she called me screaming. You're trying to destroy this family. No, I replied. You already tried. I'm documenting it. Aiden unthawed. The court date was set. That night, I went back to my desk. The project was nearly whole again. Not identical. Better. Once documentation exists, momentum follows. Courts don't respond to emotion. They respond to records. I had all three. Marcus didn't come home. He texted once, saying he needed time. He stayed with his mother. He didn't ask about Noah. I kept communication factual. Parenting logistics only. Clarity is protection. The smear campaign began quietly. A concerned call. Then messages. Screenshots. Hope you're getting help. And downer. The fake texts circulated strategically. Enough to isolate. Enough to stain. I didn't respond. I forwarded everything to my attorney. Defamation only works if you react. Silence forces escalation. Escalation creates evidence. 5 days later, Henry Whitmore called. I've heard rumors your files were compromised. He said. I'm aware. I replied. They've been addressed. It's also and I want to see it. Tomorrow, no delays. In Weld, we rehearsed that night. Technically, not theatrically. Every number verified. Every claim documented. Noah sat at the table drawing. He brought me tea I forgot to drink. The next morning, Henry listened without interruption. I was told you were unraveling, he said. I don't unravel, I replied. I adapt. It's college, Reldingswell, he nodded. This is stronger than the original, he said. You have my confidence. And I won. Validation isn't loud. It settles. That evening, Lydia called again. I recorded it. We were trying to protect him, she said. From what? I asked. Silence. Calvin's final report came that night. Metadata discrepancies. Editing artifacts. Inconsistent timestamps. The next day, Marcus appeared unannounced. They say you're exaggerating, he said. And what do the documents say? I asked. He didn't answer. This case proceeds, I said. With or without you. End quote. He left. Ruth's attorney offered a quiet settlement. I declined. Quiet settlements protect reputations. Trials expose behavior. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was seeking record. The courtroom was calm. Procedural. Ruth sat with Evan and Lydia. Marcus sat behind them. Not with me. Calvin testified first. Router logs. IP access. Timestamps. Clear diagrams. Then the deletion software. Purchase records. Usage logs. Then the audio. We did everything. End quote. No gasps. No reactions. Just silence. When I testified, I spoke chronologically, not emotionally. I was monitored in my own home. I said, without consent. 1. The judge asked one question. Why didn't you settle? Because settlements disappear. I replied. Records remain. In 1. The verdict came 2 weeks later. Joint liability. Damages awarded. Legal fees included. No one went to jail. The judgment was public. Outside the courthouse, Marcus said, I was wrong. Everyone, take it misedited, you see it too late. I replied. We later agreed to rebuild cautiously. For Noah. Not for comfort. 3 years later. Sunlight reflected off the glass of my office. Brooks, landscape partners. Marcus stood beside me. Noah held flowers too big for his hands. Ruth never visited. Never asked to see Noah. Some people can't survive written proof of who they were. That isn't punishment. It's consequence. The verdict didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. Victory is loud. Closure is quiet. If this story resonates with you, feel free to share where you're listening from and subscribe for more stories told with clarity, boundaries, and real consequences.